One summer in college, I lived in a house in town with a couple of friends. The town itself was pretty scuzzy away from campus. This is the rural Midwest, so you get your meth heads and what have you. But we were fairly close to campus in an area where students rented, so we didn't usually see much of it. Just run-down old houses that landlords rented cheap. Scariest thing you were likely to run into was a drunk girl puking off someone's porch. However, right behind the house I was living in was an abandoned high school, big old brick building that had been left up after they built a new one out by the highway back in the 70s. When you went out the back door, you had a little backyard, an alley, and then 3 stories of brick and boarded up windows. It's summer in a little college town, so obviously my housemates and I are drinking a lot and making fast friends with anyone else who happens to be around. One night, the 4 of us, a friend who lived nearby, and a handful of her friends are hanging out on our front porch when one of the friends of a friend starts talking about the old high school. I've wondered about it too, but it looks too well boarded up. But we're a little bit tipsy, so 5 or 6 of us head back into the alley and start trying all the boards until we find one that pulls loose. I should mention that one of the friends I'm with is in the process of becoming a US citizen, and he's totally paranoid about getting arrested and fucking it up. But he's also really susceptible to peer pressure, so we've got someone with us from the very start who's scared shitless and whispering about what a bad idea this is, which doesn't do much for the mood. The first room we go into is a classroom, and it's pretty trashed, probably because it's the most accessible part of the building. But when we get out into the hallways and start heading upstairs, it's just a school, a rotting, eerie, quiet school. Desks piled up in some rooms, a few chalk marks left on blackboards. Bathrooms where there's still dirty water dripping from mossy, rusted pipes in the ceiling. All of it absolutely pitch dark, except for our flashlights. We get up to the 3rd floor, and we're almost ready to head back, but there's one more staircase. It goes up to the balcony, overlooking the auditorium. The bunch of us crowd onto the landing at the top and shine our flashlights onto the rows of dusty seats. They dip away where the floor has collapsed in the middle. There's nowhere to go but back down the stairs. Of course, that's when we hear it. At first, my housemate shushes everyone. It's cops. Oh God, it's cops. I'm not taking it too seriously, but he's totally panicked, so we humour him. Flashlights off, huddled up against the wall at the top of the staircase, straining to hear. Footsteps. And I don't think it's cops. Someone is just lazily strolling through the building. No, it's 2 people, quiet murmuring. We're all scared now. Half these people I only met tonight, but we're all huddled up squeezing each other's hands. The footsteps are pretty close now, and then they stop, like they heard something. You hear that? Someone says downstairs. I did. Should have brought the gun this time. Oh God, oh shit, oh shit. We all make a tight little scrum. I can hear one of my friends whispering a prayer. I have never been so scared. The footsteps sound like they're looking for us now. I can hear them at the bottom of the stairs. I don't know how, but I had this flash of a thought that I'd rather these people know I'm here before they bump into me. I yell out, "Who's there?" and a flashlight beam swings up at us. "Holy shit," the voice says. "Who's there?" We turn on our lights, and at the bottom of the stairs are 2 particularly shifty-looking rednecks. I don't like to be too judgmental about townies, but these dudes looked rough. A couple of my friends are trying to stop shaking long enough to make small talk and diffuse the situation. One of them asks the guys what brought them in here anyway. "Oh, we just like to hang out in places like this. There's lots of rats and raccoons, and sometimes we bring the guns and have a little target practice. We got out of there quick and drained a box of Franzia on my front porch to settle our nerves." But the thought of those guys creeping around my neighborhood armed, shooting into the dark, stuck on my mind for a long time. There is an abandoned East Coast insane asylum that I've often seen posted. I personally have been there probably 10 or 15 times over the course of a decade, and each time I found something new, as the complex is very spread out and very massive. What I've never seen posted, nor even mentioned, however, is the maze of tunnels beneath the complex. Connecting each building is a subterranean network of tunnels for steam, water, sewage, and electric. The tunnels are all roughly 10 to 15 feet underground and quite long. They lead into the basement of each structure in a portion of the complex, with an emergency escape hatch that leads out into the woods between buildings in a portion. One weird thing is that most of the entrances to the tunnel system are hidden in the walls. I exited through a door once and found myself in a room that was the complex's post office, where I'd literally been 5 times before, and had never noticed that there was a hidden passage integrated into the wood panelling. The complex has been abandoned for 20 to 30 years, so parts of the tunnels are very wet with leaking water. When you're down in them, you constantly hear environmental noise as well as echoes from your own movements. There is nothing reflective down there, and there are no outside sources of light. If you don't have a bright enough flashlight, it can get kind of difficult to make out features of things in the distance, and you're relying a lot upon the slight tonal differences of what you can see to determine what something is off in the distance before you're right up on it. Go out on a moonless night and shine an LED pen light against a concrete wall from like 15 feet away to get an idea what I'm talking about. Now, for the terror. First of all, I have a stupid habit of going into these places by myself. I've recently started correcting this, because you never know when an accident could happen, leaving you alone, underground, in the dark. The last time I was in the tunnels, I was by myself, with a single AA battery-powered 75 to 100 lumen LED flashlight, mistake number 2. During this excursion, I decided to follow the tunnel down to what was the water treatment building for the complex. This tunnel slopes downward, so the leaking water previously mentioned runs down and collects at the tunnel's end. So, at the end of the tunnel, I enter this large room with 2 15-foot tall water storage tanks. There is probably an inch of water and muck on the floor, which makes a stuck noise when you walk. I'm standing still, looking around with my flashlight, and from the opposite side of the room, around 20 feet away, I hear stuck. Stuck! There is someone else in this underground room with me. I shine my flashlight across the room and don't see anything, but keep hearing the wet footprints. All of a sudden, I shine the light on this human-shaped object that is just black. There's no difference in shading or anything. It's just like a shadow against the peach-coloured concrete wall. I stammer out a "hello?" and all of a sudden, I can see this person's 2 eyes flash up, reflecting back my flashlight. But that's it. I don't know if the person was in a ghillie suit or what, but it's impossible to make out anything distinguishing. I don't know what kind of weirdo sets out in a full black get-up to rummage around underground. So, at this point, I flip out. I spin 180 degrees on my heels and bolt. I'm flying up the inclined tunnel, slipping and sliding all over the place on the damp concrete. I fell a handful of times, sprained my wrist badly, and got a number of cuts on my one knee. That run through the underground tunnels felt like an eternity. If you've ever seen the subway scene from the movie 28 Weeks Later, that's the closest thing I can approximate it to. It was the closest thing I've ever experienced to a living nightmare. I've never been so terrified in all my life. Looking back, I'm sure whomever I met down there in the dark was probably as terrified as I was, unless they were crazy as hell. I have no reason to believe they followed me, and they probably ran back the way they came, same as I did. I noticed that they didn't have a flashlight on, so what I think probably happened is that they noticed my light and pulled a hoodie up over their head, turned their light off, and tried to hide as best they could. Me and my friends, after working the close shift at Maxi D's, used to drive over and go wandering around the grounds of an old hospital that used to house mentally ill patients a long time ago. It was called Whittingham. So this place was massive, and in the 60s had gone through loads of controversy of ill-treating patients, medical testing, basically all the bad shit. And between our friendship group, these had turned into rumours and stories of haunted buildings and the like. They had built a new hospital next door, but the ground to this place were huge, abandoned, and barely even guarded. This was around 1999 to 2001. Anyway, we used to drive over, park up, and climb the fence. Each time we would try and discover a new building or area. Quite often the floors would give way, or we would have to jump across big holes in the buildings. It was pretty dangerous. But there were wards, huge halls, massive old Victorian buildings with towers, an old church, just an amazing place to explore and scare the shit out of each other. Think creepiest place you can imagine, and you're probably on the right track. Like literally something out of a horror movie set. I remember one time we were walking across an old theatre room and a friend actually fell through the floor to the basement, hurt himself pretty badly, but trying to get him out, find him, was the worst. I have a million funny stories about this place, but there are two terrifying times that will stick in my mind forever. We were exploring one of the bigger, older, Victorian-style buildings, and I had lost rock, paper, scissors to climb through the window and try and open the door from the inside. I will never forget that as I was shitting myself. I got the door open and we all went in. It was a huge mansion-like building, with those stairs that are split at the bottom and curve round to join together at the top. Torches on, and in pretty much pitch blackness, we went up them, and right along this corridor, turns out this was a building of small wards. We walked into one, and it was like a loop back round to the main corridor again. So we wandered down it, and all the beds were just metal frames with nothing else. As we turned the corner, there was one bed, however, that had a mattress on it, and it was just stained with blood, like a big patch. It was gross. We were messing about, shitting each other up as we got back to the main corridor. One of my mates freaked out. He was pointing at the steps, and there were drops of blood leading from the ward we had just been in back downstairs. I would say that's the most scared I've ever been, and when you're already a bit panicky and you see this, we absolutely bolted. I don't think we went back for a while after that one. The other time I won't ever forget is when we couldn't get into this one building, so we found a basement door around the back. You know those creepy thin stone steps that lead underground with a wooden door at the bottom? We pushed our way in and were in some kind of underground corridor. It had all of the pipes on the ceiling running the length of it. I'm a big lad, and I was stooping a bit to get through this, so you can imagine how it felt. Tight, low ceiling, and pitch black. We dared each other to go first, and luckily I was right in the middle this time. Safest place. Anyway, this corridor went on forever. We were obviously in the underground network of utility tunnels that joined the buildings. There were a couple of staircases leading off every now and then, but most were blocked off, so we just kept going. After a good few minutes of walking, we came to the end where there was one metal door. It was one of those classic hospital jail doors you see in films, with the little window hatch at eye level. We pushed this open, quite literally scared as babies, and inside the room was empty except for one thing. There was a single metal chair in the middle of the room, fastened down to the floor, and above it, hanging down from the ceiling, were two metal chains with those wrist wrap, tie things on the end. It may be the single worst thing I've ever seen. We all knew what it was and what had probably happened there, but to see it firsthand in this hidden underground room at the end of this shitty corridor, it will never leave me, that image. The stories of abuse at this hospital are widely known, but this was too much. In Kansas City, Missouri, there is an old, abandoned underground government building near the limestone caves that was severely overgrown with trees and weeds, and the entire structure was flooded. We brought a small boat inside so that we could explore the places that were no longer accessible. We were always well prepared, plenty of flashlights to go around, a lot of survival type stuff that we could MacGyver into anything that we needed. We really were never scared of the structure of anything and weren't afraid to go deeper and deeper into this building. A few hours into exploring, we come across this wall that has new cinder blocks placed in it. We want to know what is behind the wall that someone would hide, so we smash the wall in. We pull the boat through and continue exploring. Now, we had been doing things like this all summer. We even went to an abandoned morgue where someone had placed a fake severed hand in one of the metal pull-out bins for cadavers. You would think that I would have told that story, but no. We travel through the back of this abandoned government building until we reach the very back. Interestingly, it looked like a place where semi-trucks could pull up and offload whatever they needed, but everything is sealed up and we are way underground at this point. We are floating in about 5 feet of crystal clear water when I noticed something at the bottom that looked out of place. It was black plastic, like trash bags, but it had duct tape wrapped around both ends and the middle. The bags resembled a human body, with the duct tape around the feet, neck, and waist. This bag looks like something straight out of Silent Hill. As we are looking at this bag and talking about what we think it is, our friend gets the bright idea to poke it with the oar paddle. He reaches down and pokes the stomach of the bag. He immediately gets freaked out because of how it felt. Then the most unexpected shit ever starts happening. Bubbles start coming out of the backside of the bag. First, just a few tiny ones, and then a much larger set of bubbles up towards the head-shaped part of the bag. When the bigger bubbles came out, it carried some debris with it. It looked like the skin off potatoes floating in the water. We are yelling at my friend not to poke it, and the fucking bag sits up under the water. As soon as I saw the head-shaped side of the bag rise, I was done. I'm screaming for us to go. Everyone else is screaming bloody murder. The fucking boat is rocking. One friend just completely shut down and was laying in the bottom of the boat. Flashlights are getting blocked, and it's just way too dark in there now, and we have this fucking bag that has decided to randomly start floating up in the water. There's no way this bag should be floating or releasing bubbles and debris. It almost seemed to bend at the waist when it started to float. It still freaks me out just thinking about the way the bag started to float up after releasing bubbles. We had just talked about how freaky it would be if it was a human, and now it's fucking moving. It really took all I had not to panic and just pretend that it was all in my head. I paddled us away from it and we decided we were done. Even as we got further away, you could still see the water turning murky and the ripples coming from the bubbles and movement of the bag. I just wanted to get out. Unfortunately, we were so far back in this building that deciding I was done at this stage really wasn't an option. For the next 2 hours, we proceed to get lost inside this maze of a building, and everyone's minds are now playing tricks on us. Every corner, it just seemed like we had another set of eyes looking at us, like someone was following us. Your hair would stand up on end, you'd get goosebumps. Everything that could happen to make you feel like you had opened something that you shouldn't have was all happening to us now, in our most vulnerable position. All you wanted to do was run, but you were stuck on this tiny boat with only one way out. The desperation in my friend's eyes was troubling. We went from having fun to being completely terrified. The tone of the group had changed. One friend just kept repeating, "This is not good, this is not good." We got out and decided to never go back. There really was no reason to, and that place had turned from a place of adventure to a place of absolute horror. I'm still convinced that there was a body in that bag.